Hi, my name is Jimmy Larson, and I'm going to be doing my exploratory data analysis presentation on NDVI, how it fluctuates in an orchard in the springtime, how it can be used as an indicator of carbohydrate stress as it relates to apple fruitlet thinning. So in the spring, apples produce many more fruits and flowers than are needed to sustain a full crop. There's an inverse relationship between crop load and fruit size, and the more fruit that are on a tree, the more flower buds are suppressed for the following season. So growers thin to grow a crop that balances yield, fruit size, and return bloom. This is mainly done through chemical thinning. The thinner will create a stress in the tree, and that will limit carbohydrates being transported to fruit, and the fruit will then upsize. Therefore, thinning is dependent on carbohydrate status, which is something that's difficult to calculate in a tree. And so remotely sensed models that can estimate carbohydrate status would be beneficial to growers. NDVI is one such method that could be used. Normalized difference vegetation index is the difference between near-infrared light and red light that is reflected by the plants. So healthy tissues will absorb more red light and reflect more infrared light. So they'll have a NDVI closer to 1, and that will decrease as plants become more stressed, and anything that's less than 0 is unhealthy tissue. So my main driving question for the study was to look at how NDVI varies through the thinning window. That's pretty much the time from bloom through June, when trees are under intense competition and fruit are falling off pretty rapidly in that May period, and then tree kind of stabilizes after June. So look and see how NDVI varies during this period and if it correlates well with anticipated carbohydrate status. This is the orchard that was used for the analysis. It's in Quincy, Washington, and it looks like there's quite a few different plots, and it's a fairly big orchard. This is the raster data that I downloaded from Earth Explorer for 8 days from this period. I originally wanted to do an orchard at the NC State Mountain Research Horticulture Station in Mills River, but due to cloud cover, I would only have been able to download 3 days worth of data for that site. So I switched to Washington, where there's less cloud cover, and even there, I could only get 8 days. And so I got April 15th, 20th, and 30th, then May 8th, 10th, May 28th, May 30th, and June 24th, which would be the date that's kind of outside of that thinning window, when the trees are under much less competition than they are shortly after the bloom period, which for this site would have been pretty close to the end of April. So looking at the raster data, it does look like the trees are much more stressed shortly after that bloom period, April 30th and May 8th, and May 10th, then kind of the later dates, the end of May, and really when you compare it to the June measurement. This is confirmed looking at the box plots. You can see kind of a minimum here on April 30th and May 8th, and kind of then an increase as the growing season continues to the maximum of that later date where there's much less competition. You can see I overlaid the scatter plots on each of these box plots. You can see kind of big concentration of low points here on April 30th, and much of the June 24th points are pretty high on that box plot too. I then wanted to look at uniformity throughout the orchard, so how each location was kind of varying. So I did k-means analysis for each date, and I calculated the number of clusters by the silhouette method, and you can see that there are fairly similar clusters through each of the dates, particularly from May 8th onwards. You can kind of see a little bit of a shift in how the clusters are behaving from April 15th, 20th, and 30th. This could be due to differences in phenology. Maybe there's different bloom times in the orchard because there are different cultivars, and perhaps those differences would not be seen later. So kind of after that bloom period, those differences might go away. That's why we kind of see maybe different clusters early in the season rather than later measurement dates. But looking from May onward, you can see that each location is clustering pretty similarly together. So the variance is pretty homogeneous in NDVI. And then did k-means clustering for all of the dates combined, and you can once again see that gradient where the later days where there's less carbohydrate stress is clustering higher here in green than the days that cluster shortly after bloom, which is in light orange, that's clustering much lower. So that supports the hypothesis that NDVI is corresponding pretty well with anticipated carbohydrate status. It's pretty limited to say because they don't have any ground truth measurements and I don't really know what's going on in the orchard. But just looking at from what do you think would happen, it does seem that NDVI is responding pretty closely with what the carbohydrate status of the tree would be when there's more competition in the canopy versus when there's less. So using drones or ground-based systems would be really beneficial to correspond NDVI with fruitlet abscission and tree carbohydrate status. And I think that could be used to develop a model to help growers make decisions for thinning rates so that they can know how their orchard is, the carbohydrate status of their trees before they make a thinning application and can adjust the rate accordingly so that they not over thin or under thin. And especially as new technologies like variable rate sprayers come out, this NDVI based model will be able to take into account the variability of the orchard, and you can fine tune your thinning approach that way. Thank you.